Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. Lots of big political and foreign affairs news that is breaking this morning. First of all, the Trump campaign has now, I guess, officially launched. Like it had launched before, but then he kind of didn't really do anything. Yes. Now he actually seems like he's doing some stuff. He was in New Hampshire. He was in South Carolina. Really interesting comments made there, in particular about a couple of his would-be rivals, Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, so we'll tell you about that. We also, this is a great Saagar find, Jordan Peterson was on with Joe Rogan, and he was actually going after Ron DeSantis, which was...
I was fascinated by it. I thought we would talk about it.
Yeah, very interesting exchange. Yeah. So in the spirit of like 2024 and Ron DeSantis as a potential Trump contender, we will bring you that as well. We also have some new, not very good numbers for Joe Biden coming out of New Hampshire. Actually, Trump, for all the media talk of his weakness in the Republican primary, by some measures, he's in a lot better position than Joe Biden is vis-a-vis the Democratic base. So kind of interesting there. And also, this is a little bit stunning. The Biden campaign is planning on running on how great the economy is, even as their own Treasury Secretary said, saying we're headed into a recession.
Oh, so, smart.
Lots of political news. We'll get into all of that. We also have some big news coming out of the Pentagon here. They are considering sending fighter jets to Ukraine. This, of course, on the heels of deciding to send tanks after saying previously that they were not going to send tanks. We have Israel striking Iran multiple times, drone strikes. What will the fallout of that be? We also have that absolutely disgusting, disturbing, gut-wrenching video of police murdering Tyree Nichols in Memphis. We'll bring you a little bit of that and also talk to you about what it all means and what exactly happened there. And a new expert panel recommending some changes to gain-of-function research. So we're going to talk about all of that. We also have Jeffrey Stein in the show. Jeffrey, I never call him Jeffrey.
Yes.
Jeff Stein.
Let's call him Jeffrey.
Jeff Stein of the Washington Post talking about some weird tricks that could diffuse the debt ceiling crisis and whether any of them are actually realistically on the table. So let's start with the political news here. We had Donald Trump in New Hampshire and Donald Trump in South Carolina talking a little bit of trash about the potential competition, saying that he doesn't really think he has any. Let's take a listen.
Remember, I used to, in 2016, I talked about polls all the time. In 2020, I didn't have to because we didn't have a lot of competition. We had no competition, and I don't think we have competition this time either, to be honest. But I talked about the polls, and I will say that our polls, we are so far ahead in the polls, both in New Hampshire. One came out this morning, a very nice poll, we're way ahead, and one came out yesterday, a nationwide poll, and we're 35 points up, 39 points up. That's a lot.
So Ron would have not been governor if it wasn't for me. Well, then when I hear he might run, I consider that very disloyal. Talked to her for a little while. But I said, look, go by your heart if you want to run. She's publicly stated I would never run against my president. He was a great president.
So there you go, saying, same thing about Ron DeSantis and how it wouldn't be very loyal.
He would never be anybody if it wasn't for me. With Nikki Haley, he's like, yeah, she apparently came to me. I said, okay, follow your heart. But she said she would never run against her favorite president, which is me. Although Nikki apparently is looking at a February launch date
she's
for a presidential election. Good luck. That's all I have to say, I guess.
Yeah, his comments about her I thought were particularly passive aggressive, yeah, sure, she called me, follow your heart, but of course she said she'd never run against her favorite president, so
but
I don't
in
know.
A way, Krystal, he is right, isn't that?
Yeah.
She is such a kiss ass. If you genuinely believe that Trump was bad, A, you worked for him, you didn't get fired, you quit. B, you kissed his ass all the way up until January 6th, then denounced him, but then kissed his ass again.
Yeah, and so, is back here kissing the ring even before her own presidential
Make
run,
up your mind,
I mean, she's one of these, she's kind of the Kamala Harris of the Republican Party. Donor class loves this woman. They think she's the, next big thing. She's got all the diversity checkbox. And there is so little there. I mean, just in terms of personal charisma and any sort of political talent, et cetera. I mean, listen, maybe I'm wrong, but I think she is a complete donor and media class phenomenon. So anyway, it looks like is really actually getting a team together and may jump in February. She might be the first other, I guess John Bolton announced his presidential campaign as well, but other than him, she might be the first sort of challenger to jump in this race. Against him, we've been talking about how the field is kind of frozen because they're all terrified of him really coming after them in an aggressive way.
Well, they should be. And actually, immediately after that campaign, Trump put out a truth last night, quote, "The fake news media was good yesterday in their coverage of my stops in New Hampshire, other than the Globalist Street Journal, which is rarely accurate or good. They said the day was really," I mean, he's not
when
wrong.
he's right, he's right.
He's right. It was really amazing. The enthusiasm to make America great again has never been stronger. Here it is. The revelations about Ron DeSanctimonious doing far worse than many Republican governors, including that he unapologetically shut down Florida and his speeches, was interesting indeed. DJT leading big. So what can we get from that? So it's been leaked now for quite some time that the DeSantis tactic against Trump, if such a thing were to materialize, would be, I'm the one who fought against the COVID regime. Trump is the one who kept Fauci. He's the one who kept a lot of the lockdown procedures in place while he was there. So I've always been skeptical of how potent that attack is because, look, it's 2023. It's January 30th, 2023. Why are we still litigating the pandemic, especially the lockdown phase of it, which effectively has been over at least for over a year? And then number two, it gets to, I mean, look, I think this is probably what Trump would say, and I do actually think he's correct. One of the reasons DeSantis was able to do effectively whatever he wants is because the federal government does not have the power to determine lockdown procedure in the state of California or in the city of San Francisco. Like, we have a federalist system. As president, you have actually very little leeway. And look, even at the time, like, we really want to get into this, Trump was basically anti-lockdown after what, like July, I think, of 2020?
I remember in the beginning, it was like, we'll be open by Easter.
Right, we'll be open by
he was
Easter.
saying all kinds of what turned out to be
look,
totally
I agree. It
false
was
and not
idiot.
accurate things.
It was a dumb move not to fire Fauci. That's absolutely very valid criticism not to go after him on that, on some of the elements that were in it. But, you know, by and large, like, I don't know if DeSantis has a real substantive leg to stand on. As far as it lands with the base, I mean, do people really love Ron DeSantis right now because of COVID and lockdowns? Or is it COVID, anti-lockdown, economic growth, population growth under Florida, anti-woke, like just a major, like, owning the libs energy for the last 3 years? Like, how much of that is COVID and how much of that is just being hated by the media? So I'm just genuinely skeptical of this entire case.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I mean, I also think this puts the Kristi Noem alliance with Trump in some perspective too, because if any governor in the country could make the case for, like, she really didn't give a care and just kept everything open the whole time and was aggressive about it. She was the one who, you know, really was sort of at the forefront of that. So if anyone could make the case that, hey, you're kind of a fraud when it comes to what you're saying you did on COVID versus what you actually did on COVID, she would be a good figure in order to do that. But I do kind of agree with you that, listen, I mean, we've looked at the polls and in the midterm polls, we continue to see, you know, what people rank as their top issue priorities. And whether it's Democrats or Republicans, for the entire country, people have moved on. So if this is the whole thing that Ron DeSantis is going to hang his hat on, I don't know how far it gets him. I do think, too, like, listen, Trump is out there. You may be waiting and biding your time and whatever. Trump is not waiting to take shots at you. So if you aren't out there defending yourself, counterpunching, trying to gain some ground here, because Trump is right that at this point, I mean, in most polls at this point, DeSantis is significantly behind. I think you're losing the opportunity to take advantage of what was a period of weakness for Trump, which is quickly receding into the past.
I think that what DeSantis, if he were to prosecute a case, the Reagan campaign of like 1976 would be the best one. Now, Reagan actually did not win in 1976, but he came pretty damn close, and that's effectively what made him the nominee in 1980. He was propagating the message. He's like, we need to move on from this madness of Nixon, from Ford, from all of this chaos. Go towards the, quote, true conservative principle and fulfill the Barry Goldwater revolution of 1964. And it was a forward-thinking message that actually, again, came very close to actually knocking Ford off in 1976. And a lot of Gerald Ford people would tell you that Ronald Reagan is the guy who cost Ford the election because he's the one who weakened him amongst a conservative base so that he could then get elected in 1980. But the point is that Reagan was able to almost successfully take down the sitting president, Gerald Ford, amongst a conservative base because it was a feeling of, man, should we really stick with this guy? There's been all this madness with the pardons, and then obviously you have the Saigon pullout, and it's like, we just got to move on into a new phase, into a more hopeful phase. I don't know exactly how that translates, but when I'm looking at it, Reagan had the sunny energy, and at the same time, he was barbarous whenever he wanted to be with a political attack. That's, I think, the DeSantis category. Look at Florida, open for business. We're booming. That's what I want to bring to the entire country.
Yeah.
And that's all I would really with Donald, I thank you for your help. You did a great job while you were president, but it's time to move on.
Yeah.
I think that's actually a powerful message for a lot of people.
Do you think that would sell with a Republican base?
I don't know. Yeah,
I mean, that's the real question, is you have to bet on the idea that the Republican base actually sees this as a period of chaos. Actually, you know, a majority of them really want to move on. And this is the other, you know, it's the other problem. We're talking about Nikki Haley getting in the freaking John Bolton. Like, there's a whole cast of characters. Mike Pence is almost definitely going to run. Glenn Youngkin almost definitely going to run. You have a whole cast of characters looking to jump into this race. And so it's one thing if you've got this true one-on-one Ron DeSantis versus Donald Trump, but I think it becomes so much more difficult when you have a whole slate of people who are taking up media oxygen and energy and who are, you know, trying out their own tactics and shots that they're taking at Trump, and also have their own base of donors that, even if they don't really have any public support, are going to prop them up for longer than they really deserve to be in the race.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay, so let's talk about what Trump's strategy is this time around, at least thus far, because it is quite different from the stylistic approach that he took in both 2016 and 2020. Let's put this up on the screen from the New York Times. So as I said before, he had these two events in New Hampshire and South Carolina. The headline here from the Times is Trump tries a new campaign tack, small scale. At two events on Saturday, he embraced more traditional campaigning as he struggles to maintain support for his third White House bid. So in New Hampshire, he spoke in a high school auditorium in Salem, New Hampshire, which, you know, that's like classic sort of what you do when you're on a campaign, but it's not the gigantic rallies that he's kind of known for. In South Carolina, this was kind of interesting. They say he's previously attracted thousands to rallies, but he introduced his state leadership team at the state capitol, an extraordinary setting for a politician known for upsetting the establishment and taking direct aim at longstanding public institutions. You know, one thing of note in South Carolina is it all depends on how you look at this thing. Because on the one hand, he didn't get like unanimous support of the Republican congressional delegation or all the elected. I mean, obviously, Nikki Haley isn't backing him. Tim Scott is not backing him, who also, by the way, both of them might run for president. But he got the governor of the state endorsed him, and I think several other statewide elected officials from South Carolina endorsed him. And you also had the senior senator, Lindsey Graham, who endorsed him, and I think 3 out of 6 of the Republican members of the congressional delegation. So do you see that as a show of force for a former president who's now, you know, lost re-election and is running again? Or do you see that as a sign of weakness that he no longer has complete control over all of the elected officials in the state?
Yeah.
Kind of depends on how you look at it.
I look at it as what the actual state of affairs is. He has the most people are behind him in the Republican Party, from what we can tell so far. A large part of the Republican establishment afraid to go up against him. You have some people who may oppose him but are being silent about it right now, and that's effectively the state of the case in New Hampshire. In South Carolina, he's got the first mover's advantage, and also we know that announcing early doesn't really guarantee you anything. You know, remember, who was the first guy to announce in 2012? I think it was Tim Pawlenty. I mean, when's the last time you heard that?
Right about that.
Last time I checked, he was like the chairman of the American Financial Lobby here in Washington, D.C. So congratulations.
It worked out well for him, I guess.
But look, that's my point, is it's all a game of timing, but it's also, you have to have genuine appeal. So with Nikki Haley, I don't think anybody has a genuine appeal behind her, except for billionaires who are basically neocons. And, you know, I mean, good luck, I guess, in the race. I think we would find out with her pretty quick. She definitely would be a Jeb Bush type character. But for a serious person, and I really think DeSantis is the only person who might be able to do it, this is a tricky game. On the one hand, it's, you know, you just won re-election by 20, you're cruising. At a certain point, either do it or don't. On the other, Trump has always destroyed everybody he's ever gone up against. Is it different this time? Look, we can only find out through action. That's the difficulty.
A couple other notes about the way Trump is approaching the campaign, which is also interesting. I mean, 2020, the messaging was very little in terms of policy focus. It was a lot of just like weird online grievance politics, very, very hard to say. You know, he's talking about like, okay, the economy was great under me, and selling some of what he did in terms of COVID, but there wasn't a real sort of core policy argument like he was making back in 2016. And in 2016, he was successful because both people liked his style. They liked that he pissed off the people that they hated, but they also liked the core of a lot of the actual policy that he was selling. And then he, is in office and doesn't do any of those things and ends up just being another Republican who gives the store away to the rich. He seems like he's trying to recapture some of that 2016 energy. So in this article, they point out that over the past 6 weeks on Truth Social, Trump has been posting a bunch of videos about his policy positions. They say including plans to protect Social Security and Medicare. Oh, again, that's like a 2016 throwback. Ban Chinese citizens from owning U.S. farmland or telecommunications, energy tech, or medical supply companies. They say the videos in which the former president speaks directly to his camera are aimed at reassuring supporters he's focused on topics other than his 2020 defeat, an issue that flopped with midterm voters. But that doesn't mean he's let go of his election conspiracies. He still is harping on that to quite a significant degree. I think what I take from this, Saagar, clearly his campaign manager recognizes that just obsessing over the 2020 election is not going to be a winning strategy for him in the Republican primary or in a general election, and is trying to, refocus him on these other issues. Does that work? Are you able to actually corral him to talk about things when clearly his big obsession is over the election? Good luck with that.
Trump will always say whatever he wants. So background story. I don't even remember this lady's name, but somebody had accused, she was some lady went on TV and said that Trump had sexually harassed her. So I'm about to interview Trump. This happens the day before. So before I walk in there, Sarah Sanders is like, hey, don't ask about this. And I was like, that's not how this works. I'm going to ask about whatever I want. And guess what the first thing he wants to talk about is? He's like, did you see this lady on the TV? I mean, it's one of those where the staff tries to protect him, but if he wants to talk about it, he's going to talk about it, all right? You cannot, one thing have we learned at this point, it's been 7 years of the Trump era. He will say whatever he wants. And so if he believes it, which he does, by all accounts, I think we should take him at his word, then we're going to hear a lot about it during the campaign. That's baked into any support of Trump or whatever. If people who are like, I like the policies but not the tweets, well, I'm sorry. They are completely indistinguishable whenever it comes to the man.
Correct.
That's just how it goes.
Correct. All right. So that's kind of an encapsulation of where Trump and his campaign is at this point. I guess the last thing I will note is that in contrast to the very sort of contained launch speech that he gave that was, kind of boring and dull and just reading off the teleprompter, these speeches were more like the, Trump ad-libbing stem winders of the past. So that was more the energy of these particular speeches for whatever that's worth.
Yeah.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now. And Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us. And if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.